And we begin on this Wednesday with two moments that capture day 14 of the Russian invasion for people in Kiev. The sound of air sirens in the early dawn over the Ukrainian capital. And then later this morning, another moment that captures Ukrainian spirit and defiance. That is Ukraine's national anthem as it sounds over streets that show more preparations for potential new Russian attacks. Anti-tank barriers welded out of steel beams, civilians making sandbags to protect buildings from damage. These are the new satellite pictures that show the Russian forces just west of Ukraine. That is Antonov Airport. Maxar Technologies says these images were captured yesterday and show Russian armored vehicles moving toward the northeast. You can make out the tracks in the snow there. In an update this morning, as we look at the map, Ukraine's military commanders say that surrounding Kiev and other major cities remains the goal of Russian forces. And the latest briefing from the U.S. military notes that Russian forces have pushed to within 40 kilometers of the Ukrainian capital from the east. That advance is giving new urgency to getting civilians out of harm's way this morning.
Сьогодні нам вдалося організувати гуманітарний коридор з міста Суми до Полтави. Сотні людей врятовано, гуманітарний вантаж доставили, але це лише відсоток від того, що треба зробити і чого очікують наші люди, заблоковані українці.
That is Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as he spoke this morning, his latest address, warning the threat level is now at maximum. We can tell you there is another temporary ceasefire in place for 6 civilian corridors, including more cities on Kiev's outskirts like Irpin, where the route to safety is made more treacherous by Russian shelling. Now, this is another new look, again from Maxar Technologies, that shows a treacherous crossing under a damaged bridge. It shows it from above, and then, as you see, more aftermath as well from Russian attacks. That's where we're going to begin this Wednesday, and Margaret Evans helps us tell the story. She's live in Lviv, leading off our coverage today. So again, as we were just talking about, Margaret, Ukraine and Russia agreeing to halt fighting in some places to allow people to flee to safety. What is the latest on the evacuations?
Well, as you can imagine, Heather, there's a great deal of skepticism about those humanitarian corridors holding, about the pause holding. The Ukrainians have announced that they believe there will be a pause in fighting between 9 a.m. local time and 9 p.m. Tonight, so theoretically should be able to give some access for people to flee those cities encircled and in difficulty. But as we've seen in the southern city of Mariupol, for instance, they've been trying to have a humanitarian corridor out of there for days. That city is without water, electricity. We hear reports of bodies in the ground, people being unable to get to their injured and their dead. So there's a lot of skepticism, but of course the situation is so desperate that people are going to have to try. And we've seen, again, some of those images in some of the neighborhoods just north of the capital, Kyiv, people trying to flee, coming through difficult terrain to begin with, bridges bombed out by the Ukrainians to stop a Russian advance, and then those people coming under shelling. So hope, skepticism, all in one, and underlying it all, desperation and people in fear for their lives and in flight.
Margaret, the people who are moving down those civilian corridors, many of them are heading right to the city where you are, to Lviv. So this morning, what is the situation there as you see it around you?
Well, it feels fairly calm here. This is a city where the authorities just yesterday said they're at capacity in terms of the number of people they are able to help. If you look behind me, on one side of me, you can see a church, and you can see that they've now started to board up the windows of the church. On the other side of me, a statue of Neptune, which has been shrouded, and they're starting to build a casing around that. This is an historical city that is one of the world's gems, and people are are really worried about losing that valuable cultural heritage. So people are trying to prepare themselves. It's a strange feeling, though, here. In the afternoon, it's so crowded that it looks almost like it should be a day where tourists are visiting, until you start to look around and notice the people around you. They're carrying backpacks, bags of stuff with bread in them. We noticed a woman and her son sitting in a cafe yesterday, and the staff were trying to get them to leave, and they said, couldn't we stay? And we asked them if they needed money. They said, no, they have money. They just want a place to sit down. I think here also that you have to remember, when we were in Kyiv, when the invasion began, we would talk to people and they said to us, we don't believe it's going to happen. That is why we haven't left. We're hearing that from a lot of people here as well. But you can see that the city is preparing itself, and people are trying to remind themselves that the people in Kyiv just under 2 weeks ago were saying it won't happen. And we're now seeing them here crowded into train stations trying to get out. So people are trying to get the message through. It can happen here. They're afraid that it will, and they're still determined to try to protect themselves, help the people who are fleeing, and prepare mentally as well as physically.
Margaret Evans, thank you so much. Appreciate the reporting live from Lviv.